I mean, the issue isn't the defense right now, it's the offense.
This is the Aaron Rodgers show. The offensive coordinator was, in my opinion, part of the problem, and that's an Aaron Rodgers guy, and Saleh's not.
The sky is falling around this organization.
The Jets have fired head coach, or former head coach now, Robert Saleh. And to the surprise of not many, I guess, that it was not a question of if, but when, I think most people thought, if this continued, if this mediocrity, and I'm being kind, continue with the New York Jets. Or best we got, August 15th was the latest we were able to ascertain what Saleh was for first coach fired. On August 15th, it was 9-1. I don't know who was offering that since, but obviously it would have shortened since. But 9-1 was what he was available on, what he was available in the offseason in that market. Drew, what's your reaction to that?
This is probably a move that was more precipitated by the loss to the Broncos, I suppose, because otherwise, that the other two, the other two Jets losses in their 2-3 start to the season, one of them was relatively explainable with the opener against, an informed Niners team. And then, they were live in that game in London with a pretty, impressive effort to stay in that game and to give themselves an opportunity for a comeback. So I definitely didn't get the sense that there was quit in the air in the locker room, but this is the Aaron Rodgers show. You signed, this is what you signed up for when you bring him in the first place. A lot of the roster moves and the roster constructions have his fingerprints all over them. And, to the degree that the offensive coordinator was, in my opinion, part of the problem, and that's an Aaron Rodgers guy, and Saleh's not. That also is an issue for kind of longevity as a head coach. And there was a moment offshore, at least, where first coach fired and coach of the year odds were up. First market to pop, and Saleh was the favorite in both. And it was hilarious
that's
because
right.
It was like, this is a make or break season for the Jets. Either they make it and he's your coach of the year contender, or they don't and he's gone. And he ended up drifting pretty aggressively in that market, as it seemed very likely that Doug Peterson was going to lose his job on either end of going to London. But no, it turns out the Jets make the move first. I'm hanging on by a thread here to find out who the interim coach is. If it's Hackett, I don't know.
What do you say at that point?
Yeah, I mean, if it's Hackett, I don't know what you say, but pretty clearly, the writing was on the wall to a degree in that, Rodgers and Saleh were talking past each other with the media clips that they were giving the last 2 weeks in terms of his cadence and what that meant, and the offensive preparation and the route trees and all the players talking past Saleh in the media was a bad sign.
I didn't mean to interrupt, but that's what was in my head as you were talking, which is that couldn't have helped, right? The fact that Saleh comes out and says we need to change the cadences, which is, we need to change the cadence pattern, which Aaron Rodgers has been using from the dawn of time. And Aaron Rodgers immediately said, maybe we should hold people accountable instead. Or we could, the exact quote was, or we could hold people accountable. And in just that Aaron Rodgers snarky kind of way. And that couldn't have helped. Yeah. That couldn't have helped. You're absolutely right.
It will be the DC who's taking over interim head coaching responsibilities. That, according to Peter Schrager, Jeff Ulbrich.
Your reaction to the biggest news in sports?
Yeah, Adam, I guess we're all surprised at the timing of it, losing to the Vikings in London. But the reality of it is, I mean, you got an owner who's getting tired of a team that simply cannot win. But I would suggest that, when you have a culture and an environment that is conducive to poor decisions, and not just this year or last year, really over the past 2 decades. You go back and look at Woody Johnson's ownership. In the last 15 years alone, they drafted Mark Sanchez, Geno Smith, who was a high second-round pick, Sam Darnold, and Zach Wilson. None of those quarterbacks have worked out. Now they're trying to make it work with a 40-year-old quarterback that's coming off an Achilles rupture from last season. And to make matters worse, they go over to London and lose to a quarterback that was in their building, that had a losing record in Sam Darnold. And now all of a sudden the talk of the NFL the first month of the season is the Vikings and Sam Darnold. Now, Darnold didn't have a great day, but that was an embarrassment for Woody Johnson. He was over there with a lot of his friends as the former ambassador to the UK, and I just think It is what it is. I mean, look, Joe Douglas bears responsibility. Nathaniel Hackett bears responsibility. The offense is unwatchable right now. You look at Aaron Rodgers' numbers, fewest passing yards, fewest yards per attempt, worst quarterback rating through the first 5 games in his career. And I don't know how good this offense is. I mean, the issue isn't the defense right now. It's the offense. The offensive line isn't great. You know, the key to it all is Breece Hall. He's been a non-factor the last 2 weeks. And I think they're just average around him. And I think you're asking a 40-year-old quarterback to go out there and win games, and you can see the frustration. You can see the disappointment. His body language isn't great, and I think the owner simply had enough. I don't know that any of the changes are going to make a difference. I think what you see is what you get with the Jets this season. And the crazy thing is they're only a game out of first place. They got the Bills coming, and they got the Bills on Monday night, and they can get right back in this thing. But it just seems like the sky is falling around this organization.
What do you see moving forward here for this team, specifically at quarterback?
Well, I think there's some structural issues in terms of what they're doing offensively. And Adam, you know my relationship with Paul Hackett, and I've known Nathaniel a long time. So it pains me to say this. I think he's in over his head right now. I think he's struggling a little bit with the scheme. I don't think there's any rhyme or reason to what they're doing. I think Breece Hall is the key to it. He was a non-factor last week or 2 weeks ago. He had 18 scrimmage yards this past weekend, not a whole lot more. And I think, that's when he doesn't have a big day rushing and receiving, this is an offense that's going to struggle. Here's what bothers me when you look at Aaron Rodgers right now, Adam. We talk all the time in the West Coast system about trust your feet. Your feet will take you to the completion. Look at Aaron Rodgers' feet. Look at some of the decision-making through 3 interceptions against the Vikings. He was confused. He throws the interception to Van Ginkel. He doesn't see Van Ginkel drop right in front of him. Van Ginkel's up in the line of scrimmage. He drops, and Van Ginkel takes it back for a touchdown, pick 6. Even on the sack, there's some sacks we saw last week against the Broncos. There was a big sack earlier in the game where they bring a free rusher off the edge. Aaron Rodgers doesn't even see it. We're talking about one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game, obvious Hall of Fame quarterback. And when you see that, when you see quarterbacks not seeing free rushers, not recognizing pressures, then you say to yourself, wait a minute, you got a quarterback that's not right, not seeing the field. This is Aaron Rodgers we're talking about. So I think schematically there's some things that they're not doing well. I think some of the play call has been very curious at best. And I just think he's frustrated. I think he can't fix it. See, that's the problem. He's a great player. But great players, Joe Montana and Peyton Manning, they're not great offensive coordinators. They're great players. And you have to work together. And I just think there's a disconnect right now in terms of the system, in terms of the communication, in terms of the players around him. And I just think he's really disappointed. And I don't think he knows how to fix it. And that's a big part of the problem in New York.
Thanks for watching, but don't let the betting insights end here. If you want an extra edge this football season, you can get a month of VSiN Pro right now absolutely free. That means access to our betting insights, analysis, and tools like our betting splits at 0 cost to you. Click the link in the description to sign up.